What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Alex here from Alex CFD, and today we have another deck profile. So this is the first of many kicking us off for the history collection, something that I'm super excited about. And I've said my piece about the prices and all that, but you know, it is what it is at this point. I've done what I can. At this point, I'm just going to move on and just continue to bring you content for the channel. So thank you guys in advance for tuning into this. I really do appreciate all the support I'm getting recently. So the big thank you to all of you. But this is actually a super fun deck, something that I have been crafting for quite a while. I've been playing the regular version of this for, you know, more casually for quite a bit, but now with the history collection, I actually feel like this is a fairly competitive deck. I'm not going to say it's going to top BCSs, things like that, but I definitely have no problem taking this to locals, playing with my friend group, and maybe even a little bit beyond. Like, you really have a ton of closeout power in this, and people don't really know how to play against it in a sense. So I personally really do enjoy this deck, and I think that's what's most important. I think that you know, you really have to find a deck that you vibe with and really kind of want to play, because at the end of the day, if you're not having fun, what's the point of all this? So without further ado, let's hop right into the deck. I do think that it is fairly competitive, kind of sitting at like a tier 2 kind of like a tier 2 kind of range in generals, but I personally really do like it. So let's hop right in. So starting us off, we are getting 4 of the older Grandgallop. So Great Cosmic Hero, Grandgallop. 4 of the older ones, just because we don't need the V1 anymore. The marker doesn't do as much as you think at all. The ride up with that one is just really not that great in comparison to this one over here. We are farming so much more. You're not afraid to go into your grade 3 turn anymore and really just try to close out the game immediately off of some crit skills. So this is a far better option. This also allows us, when we're striding upon, give your Vanguard, the thing that you stride into, an extra 4k, as well as the ability to, when it hits, draw a card. So it's giving that its ability. So when you actually go into that stride, the new stride, the eroded one, I'll show you that in a little bit obviously too when we get into the G zone, but once you do that, like, it's still gonna hit regardless based on that new text. So you can just CB1 to draw one, which is actually really nice. And then on top of it too, that stride also has like an on hit draw and a retire and stuff. So like, you are actually farming a lot of cards out of this, and I think that people don't really realize that. You start to have like a 10 to 13 card hand out of your first, you know, if you go first kind of on your stride up turn. Even you could even superior stride if you are going second. It's not a bad play to kind of survive a little bit later into the game if need be. You know, the situation has to be right, but I just feel like this is a really solid version of Gallop over here overall, and this is the one that we're really building towards and playing to in general, so we're keeping it at that. So yeah. Next up over here, Taser Lage, 2 of the cards coming out of the D series, which is actually pretty good for this deck. I think that it still just helps you deal with superior calling. Basically, when your opponent calls a card not from hand, anywhere else but pretty much from hand, you can choose to rest it once per turn, and you choose when it is. So like, if you know there's like a multi-attack coming, if they didn't deal with this, if they didn't clear it off your board, you know, you choose when to actually go ahead and pop that and rest it. So very useful card. I feel like this too is almost a bait. It makes your opponent deal with this, because later on, if they are going to spam attacks by calling from the deck or hand, whatever it is, it's just when it's called. So like, this gets around a lot of that like hand stuff that people are playing because of Mega Colony and whatnot. So pretty good use of a spot on the board for the 13k body, as well as kind of baiting your opponent into using resources to deal with it. So I personally really like it. Next up here too, Dizoris. So Dizoris is still very solid. Card that's been around since almost the beginning of V-Series, like I think it was a couple months in and it was printed. But to CB1, put into your soul, give your Vanguard 10k and an extra drive. In a deck that you're already drive checking a whole lot, you know, when you're striding, it feels really good going for that 4th kind of drive check. I personally do like that. It also helps you pay for its own cost, for the cost of a G guard a little bit later, because there are ones that can like recycle your grade 3s, and this kind of helps like get into that rhythm, get into that loop a little bit. And we don't play like a ton of grade 3s in this deck, so to be able to kind of do that and like recycle and see itself over and over is pretty good. So as you can see, this is pretty much it aside from the trigger grade 3, all the grade 3s that we do run in the deck, so not as heavy as some of the other DP decks. Next up here too, we are running 4 of the Grandvolver. So Grandvolver is actually a great card. Really helps in general put that pressure on early on into the game, either on your, even if you're going for second, like first or second, any part of the game. I feel like this is good and impactful because we are typically going force 1. So what this does is you counterblast, soul blast 1. You get to draw a card. If your Vanguard is the Cosmic Hero Grandgallop, you're able to give it an extra crit, and this gets an extra 10k. So it's card draw, an extra crit, a little bit more pressure on your Vanguard, putting your opponent in some like situations where they would have just taken the van and like roll the dice. It kind of brings them to a point where like they can't do that, or it becomes a lot more risky if they do. And since we're not playing Force 2, like, it does actually, this card matters a lot. Like, again, it's good at any point of the game. A little bit costly with the Counterblast Soul Blast. This deck does run through some soul in general, but I feel like I've never really had like a real resource problem. It's more of like a choice of what to use at certain points. Things are still like just as like there's a lot of good choices in this deck, so you really can't go wrong no matter what. Next up over here, I have debated so heavily what this slot should be. I've tried so many different things, so let me go through it. I actually landed on Toxic Monster Gel Sludge. Gel Sludge is great. Basically just starts to filter out your opponent's resources early on into the game if they're grade 2, if they're on grade 3, if you're going second, if you're going first. It's still a solid card overall. I really believe that this kind of helps you mitigate and kind of pace your opponent's play a little more, because we don't have a ton of defensive options in this deck. We have a lot of good card draw, we have a lot of pressure through our Vanguard, but our opponent's usually allowed to like run free because we are swinging into them with the Vanguard, and like, you know, if we don't close them out, let's say we don't hit them with all the crits that we needed, now they have like, you know, 5 face-up counterblasts or whatever in their damage zone. So this kind of helps you mitigate and get rid of some of the resources they would have rolled you over with. So I personally really do like it. Next up over here too, the last grade 2, we are going to get into Star King's Ambassador Gingard. So Gingard is very, very simple. 3 of them I still feel like is the magic ratio in my opinion, but this basically, if your opponent's Vanguard is a grade, if your Vanguard is less than your opponent's grade Vanguard, it gets an extra 15k shield. So it's a 20k shield in hand. It's also a body, can intercept to still get that too, which is nice. So it kind of, again, baits your opponent into using resources to try to get rid of it. Otherwise, it's a 20k shield if it's on board, or straight from the hand. Again, 20k shield, just a little bit of a oopsie button. It's very, that card actually does matter a lot. You know, on paper it reads in practice it's very, very good. Next up here, getting to the grade 1s now, I'm running a 2-2 split of the Grand Ropes over here. I think I might actually up this to 3 of the Grand Rope from G era, and then 1 of the one from the V series. But essentially you just need to find your gallops. You just need to do it. This allows you to kind of go in and get those. I think too, the reasoning, I'll show you later when I get into the triggers why I want to bump this in just a second, but there is a reason in general. Being able to find these other grade 3s though do feel really good, and the fact of the matter is you actually want to go and find your heal trigger because it is so important in this deck. I feel like this deck more so than others really relies on a certain G guard to kind of recycle and just start to buff itself out defensively. I think it's just super important. So right now it is a 2-2 split. I might try it with an extra one of the G1 just because you can use it as stride fodder when you are striding. Just a heads up, you cannot use this one when you are striding into, what is it, into the superior stride. It has to be like a hard grade 3, like a manual grade 3. So just wanted to kind of let you guys know that. Next up here too, just a really solid option for the grade 1 ride up over here, just ride in general. We are looking at 3 of the Dimensional Robo Die Scooper. So Die Scooper allows us to look at the top 7 when ridden upon, add a grade 3 to hand. Also, when this unit is placed on rear guard, one of our grade 3 Vanguards gets an additional 5k until the end of turn. So not really amazing because it has to be a grade 3, but it's really for that first skill over there, just digging deeper into your deck. You need to see the gallops, you need to see some of your support pieces. It's just very, very solid. Not much else more to say about that. We are next up going to get into 2 Hanali. So this is more of a precautionary thing at the moment. I don't feel like it really, it doesn't further your strategy necessarily as much as it kind of helps you mitigate your opponents. If you're just going into the spam deck, like a deck that spams out attacks, like Gold Paladin, like even like Chaos Breaker, or not Chaos Breaker, Messiah, like odd things like that. Like they do actually spam a ton of attacks now, and I'm seeing that, Yasuri, things like that. So and Victor, I can go on and on. Sorry, I just rambled a little bit there, but these are all the decks that I've played against to kind of test this deck, and like Hanali stops a lot of it. Hanali helps you a whole lot. It kind of maybe won't impact them so much in that they start paying all those counterblasts, but maybe it makes them pump the brakes a little bit and not go as hard as they would have done otherwise. And I feel like this is just a really solid defensive option right now. The ratio might change on that. I'm not 100% sure. It kind of depends on the meta. It's a very meta dependent card in general, but I think 2 of is pretty safe for the moment. If you need to bump it, go for it. If you need to take it down based on your local meta or your regional meta, whatever it is, totally go for it as well. I feel like it's a safe starting point. Next up over here too, Cosmic Hero Grand Scout, just basically a better version of Commander Laurel, the V version at least. So on GB2, you basically get to, when this unit is placed on rear, you may pay the cost. If you do, choose one of your Vanguards with Gallop in its name, double its power until the end of turn, and at the end of the turn, retire this unit and then soul charge one. So again, soul is super important in this deck. You are soul blasting a whole lot as we go through. We have a couple cards that do it over here. So in order to kind of get that back is really nice. On top of it too, doubling your Vanguard's power is just super important. So there's no question marks with that either. So hitting your power thresholds is very important. Obviously this helps you do it, so we include it. One of the enigmas over here, just for the fact that you do kind of go into X-Gallop a whole lot, so your Vanguard will have the burst ability just to be able to counterblast, Soul Blast, get this back to hand, is like a huge defensive boon in my opinion. And then one of the Elementaria Sanctitude, just kind of need to play it in today's format. I feel like, you know, it's really a deck that isn't running it isn't quite complete. Even if, like, you know, there's like some all-in strategies, those are the only ones that you really can't be like, okay, it's not 100% necessary, but we're not really at that point. You know, we feel like that almost, but that's just the natural pressure this deck kind of exudes. So I think that one Elementaria is pretty good right there. We also play one of the OG Commander Laurel. I feel like this one's better, much better than the V Series one. Now, this doesn't give your Vanguard the ability, so when it does hit, it has to hit naturally, and then you can rest your 4 other units and then restand it. So that's super big on like a Gallop turn, or even on like Unibird, things like that. If you're trying to farm a little bit more, definitely is super solid to go into this and just kind of, you know, threaten the restand. So now it's something that they would have taken. Perhaps maybe they'll be a little bit more cautious now, things like that. So it's limited to 1, so we only play 1, but that is just what it is. And then over here, just any DP starter is good, and that is pretty much the main deck over here. Let's get into the triggers now. So we are going to play one of the, what is this, the Elder Breath, so this is the OT. You can make an argument for the red one, I feel like. Overall, though, I feel like this is still just more impactful, doubling your power on something that you typically restand. Like, I will say X-Gallop is still like the main play in this deck, and this really helps you kind of just double the power to like restand and become like infinitely more powerful and still kind of buff up your rear guard column. So very impactful. I think that's necessary. 3 Linka. I know a lot of people are married to the idea of 4, but a lot of times, you know, this, you're not properly at the GB2, especially if you go second. You're not going to be at that GB2 quick enough. So I think 3 of, you'll definitely see it at least once per game, for the most part, hopefully at least. But PG break is absolutely necessary, so you need to see it. I'm running 4 of the grade 3 Heal Guardians over here, again searchable off of the grade 1 that we were running previously, so definitely need it. Just really good to mitigate some early game damage, and also is a grade 3, which is very good. And then over here we have 2 of the Crit Sentinels, and then 6 over here of the 3, I'm doing 3-3 split. So we have 3 of the new crits, 3 of the Stride Fodder crits. I just feel like you need to see the Stride Fodder. We don't have like a ton of things, a ton of grade 3s in this deck, so it's not like an easy stride, in my opinion. This is what I was talking about, where if I bumped up the extra Grand Rope to 3 of the G era ones, it has that like stride kind of, what is it, the subtext being that you can just discard it for the stride. I would bump the draw trigger, I think, up to 4, and I might try that, but honestly, a lot of people don't respect DP, and they think that you're not running enough crits because you are running more Linka. If you run at least just 8 crits in general, you're going to surprise a lot of people. And the fact of the matter is that, like, I think the 30k shields are fine for the most part. You don't have like a ton of hand to be ripping through with the regular Perfect Guard, so I feel like it just makes it a little bit more impactful overall in terms of pressure. And then a 1 card to guard is just typically better. I feel like a lot of Excel decks are back in the meta where they're not as big as they previously were. In certain situations it does hurt, but I feel like in general, for what we want to do for our win con plus the feel of your hand throughout, I feel like it just feels better to 1 card guard a lot of stuff. Like, we are pretty bulky overall, and like we do have a solid hand size, but I feel like those are just completely adequate. Getting into the G zone now over here, so everybody's favorite card, you need 1 Messiah. Just, you know, I'm gonna go past it. You just need it. If you can't afford it, don't worry about it. It is what it is. But 2 of the new guys over here, so the Super Cosmic Hero X Rogue, basically, you know, it has the new subtext on it where you can kind of stride into it as soon as you're on grade 3, you know, pseudo stride into it, I guess, whatever you want to call it. So when it attacks, it does hit, and then when an attack does hit a Vanguard, it does hit a Vanguard if this guy's over 37k or greater. You get to draw a card, and your opponent chooses one of their rear guards and retires it. So it's actually your opponent gets to choose it, but oh, that's really bad glare over there. Let's start on the other side. But 2 of these, just the name flip itself, and get you a ton of like card advantage early is super worth it in my opinion. Next up here too, we actually don't find ourselves as reliant on this card anymore, but we are going to be running 2 Geoma Glass. So typically you used to flip up Geoma Glass every single time and make the grade 3 super bulky. That's not really the case anymore, because when you're going into the X Rogue, you have to name flip itself. You can't flip this one, so we don't necessarily get the benefits of it being flipped up in the G zone. And I still think you have to kind of close out on your second stride at least. So just 2 of these is now fine. At maximum, you typically flip 2 throughout the game. If you want to go into this as your second stride, that is completely viable. The only thing is you have to know that like you still have a lot of grade 3s in deck to really make it worth it. You know, it is what it is. 2 of those are over there, I feel like are absolutely fine. Still running 3 of the X-Gallop. You can totally bump one of these down, bump one more Geomaglass up if you want, but X-Gallop is awesome card. Really, if you hit the power thresholds, you get to get an extra crit. I'm sorry, an extra drive, and you also get to restand if it's 80,000 or greater at the end of its attack, and then if it does restand, it gets -4 drive. This is actually really good with the Dizoris just because you give it an extra drive, so it becomes 5 drive, so when you restand it, it at least has 1, so you at least threaten a little bit. One of the final Dimax DX, just to have in there, like, it's a costless kind of, it doesn't use any resources, it's just there to be there. I don't really go into it too much. We have 2 of the Unibirds. Let me toss this here. Unibird's still great. If you need a farming turn, if you feel like you can just push through and you know they don't have any PGs in their hand, this could really be the end of the road for your opponent. Getting an extra 10k for every single card that you have on your side of the field, as well as in your damage zone, is super big, gets an extra crit, and it just gets an extra drive. Is it 2 drives over here? Yeah, 2 drives. So just being able to drive 5 times is pretty important. Just know that if you restand it off the Commander Laurel, its skill is once per turn, so you can't kind of do that twice, but still, drive checking 8 times, like, you have a huge hand after that, which is really, really nice. For the G-Guards, I would add one more. I'll kind of, I'll post it in like the comments or whatever. I don't know if I can flash it on screen over here. I don't have like crazy editing software or anything, but pretty simple. We do run one of the Zeal just to kind of buff our Vanguards. I know we're running the 11k body, so it could hurt us at certain times, and if your opponent has a ton of poke attacks, I feel like this is good for just giving you that lingering 5k on your Vanguard. This guy over here, recycling your grade 3s, you need to see them over and over. Essentially, it is what it is. Once you flip up 1 Geomaglass, it feels really, really good. Being able to kind of get that those back to hand is super important, and I think 3 of them is the correct ratio. You can run 2 if you want, but I think 3 is correct. And then one of the, what is it, Oceanic Conversion Atlantis Dual Dolphin over here. So honestly, solid card just to kind of like counter charge and soul charge. We do run through resources. Like, you can obviously see there's a lot of resource consumption in this deck, but overall I'm having a ton of fun with it. I feel like the pressure that it exudes is very solid overall. You definitely will take a lot of people by surprise. Like, people are not expecting to play Gallop, you know, even with this new stuff coming out. I feel like they don't really know how to play against it properly. It's just, like I said, very solid, very fun, very consistent kind of deck. So if you guys have any questions, let me know down in the comments below. I enjoy playing this deck a whole lot. I hope you guys too. If you did enjoy the content, maybe consider leaving a like on the video, possibly subscribing to the channel. We also have a TCG player link you can shop through down at the bottom in the description. Absolutely no cost to you. You can help support the channel. I definitely appreciate that. I'll never ask you guys for money or anything like that, so thank you in advance. This is Alex from Alex CFV signing out.